And welcome back to the Playbook Sports Podcast presented by Playbook Sports. As always, I am your host, Jordan. With me today is co-host Zak Sadik.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing?
All right, so as you can see here, the long-awaited, we will be grading fantasy football teams. We have taken submissions. We actually got a whole lot. Zach and I do have personal lives, though, so we cannot rank all 20 to 30 we were sent. We will only do the top five, the first five that were sent to us. So, Zach, to start things off, let's go with this. We have Sebastian Jane, one of our best supporters, a BAM enthusiast. He's in a 12 league. He had the third pick. Let's go down. Let's break it down. It looks like he drafted Jamar Chase with the third pick. Can't go wrong with that one. Unless they don't give him the penny over what he's asking. That's what he's asking for. I think it's stupid. Let me know what you think. We'll go down. QB Jalen Hurts.
Oh, you want to go position by position?
We can, yeah.
I mean, can't go wrong with the quarterback there. I think Jalen Hurts is probably the first or second quarterback off the board. So I'm assuming that might be probably a third or fourth round pick based on this team, but you can't go wrong drafting Jalen Hurts.
So your running backs, Devon Achane, Aaron Jones. I like Devon Achane. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about Aaron Jones. You know, you and I have said on this podcast, the running backs that switch teams later in their career, they kind of don't do what you think they're going to do. But I feel like in some of the drafts I've been doing, Aaron Jones is falling so far down that at that point, it's like you have to take him.
Yeah. And if that's the case, then you can't argue with it. It depends on the value. Trusting him as your RB2, it's a little bit tricky. I'm not sure if I'm very comfortable with that. But when you're in a 12-team league and you're trying to fill out your receiver spots, I mean, it's not the end of the world taking Aaron Jones as your RB2.
And then Jamar Chase, Drake London, an established wide receiver one, and one that we think is going to go absolutely crazy this year. I think it's as clean as you can get as your wide receiver one and your wide receiver two.
Yeah,
Not much to say there.
No complaints there. This is a very solid starting lineup. Goddard might be the biggest hole at tight end, but you have Jalen Hurts, Devon Achane, Jamar Chase, Drake London. Those are all like top tier at where they're on this roster. I mean, Achane, there's a lot of different avenues that his season can go, but I'm personally trusting him in a bunch of my leagues. So I love the upside that he presents there. He probably waited on running back, got Achane in the late second or early third. So good value there, and hopefully he can take this team over the top.
So, like you said, it looks like the biggest hole in this team is probably the tight end, which in a 12-team league is probably a little hard unless you're going super early to get one of those top five. If you wait, you'll probably end up with somebody like this, who Dallas Goedert is a serviceable tight end, but he's not one of those set it and forget it's that, most people like to get on their teams. But with how this team is built, I don't think you can really complain about Dallas Goedert.
Right. I mean, it depends. It depends who's on the board. I mean, Dallas Goedert, that basically means that he's either, a big Eagles fan or he punted on tight end until like one of the very last few rounds. So, I mean, if he's gobbling up value, during the draft and just waiting on tight end, that's fine. But I probably would have liked to see someone else, even if you waited and you took a guy like Pitts, or if you waited even longer and got a guy like Brock Bowers from the Raiders. Those would be better options. But again, he could have been just picking up bench value and waiting on tight end till the very end.
Fun fact: Sebastian is a Dolphins fan.
Okay, so then it wasn't the Eagles bias there.
So now in flex we have Keenan Allen, who a little bit on the older side. Mr. Reliable, though, always gets open. He's like a Mike Evans at this point. New team, new quarterback. What are we thinking about Keenan Allen?
I mean, he has potential. What'll be really interesting in that offense is if Romeo Odunze ends up being a big role, especially early on in the season. But Keenan Allen is basically that old reliable in that offense. He's not necessarily a down the field guy at this point in his career. He'll do a lot of work in the intermediate area. But as a flex on a fantasy team, can't really argue it. I'm sure by the time he got around to the flex, it kind of dries up, especially in these 12-team leagues. So Keenan Allen, not too shabby there, and he has a couple options on the bench to plug in if Keenan Allen falters a little bit.
I don't think we're not going to rate the defenses because you and I, we both pick up a new defense every week. We don't like to keep it steady.
Right. Screen
Kickers, you hate
defenses, everybody.
kickers. You despise kickers.
There's no scouting. You just pick one and hope that they go for 6 field goals in a week.
Exactly. So now let's get to the bench. Brian Robinson, it's pretty good RB3 here, I guess you would call it. Yeah,
Yep.
RB3. DeAndre Hopkins, somebody that I've hounded for depending on where he got him. I think it's great value. If you're getting him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, you can't just not take him. Trey Benson, I don't know anything about Trey Benson. So what do you think about Trey Benson?
I mean, solid backup running back. This is basically, if anything happens to James Conner, this will be the guy. He might get some touches along with James Conner, but you're not going to really expect much from him unless there's an injury.
Okay, so knock on wood, something inevitably is going to happen to James Conner.
That's true.
Something always happens to James Conner.
Yeah.
I don't think he's played a full season in his entire career. So
yeah,
probably a smart pick. That's exactly probably why I picked him up. J.K. Dobbins, somebody I've been hounding on. That's Judy's sleeper right there. Love that pick. I've been getting him in every league except for one. I was sniped because they listened to the podcast. Jameson Williams is an interesting one. So he fell to me in one of my drafts last night, and I was like, is this fate? He was a 12th overall pick. He's been injured. He's in a high-powered offense that only really has one established receiver. So it's like there's a role built in for him. What do we think about Jameson Williams?
I mean, I don't really understand the draft position. He especially in ESPN leagues, he is way down the list, and you're getting him in the very late rounds. If he's even being drafted, like it's crazy to me. He has all the potential in the world. Obviously, he had that big injury coming out of college and missed his first season in the NFL. Last year was really his rookie season, kind of feeling things out, and he wasn't super productive, on the team with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. But this offense is an offense that's still improving, and there's plenty of room for additional passing volume his way. So that's a low risk, high reward proposition right there. That he'll just be as good as he should have been coming out of college, and I expect big things from him.
I got him in a 10-team league with my last pick.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if I didn't take him, nobody else was taking him.
If he's available in your leagues, go get him right now as a free agent.
So Xavier
Talent is too
Legette.
good.
Xavier Legette, don't know anything about him. I know he's a rookie. I don't really trust Carolina receivers unless it's Deontay Johnson. But I feel like this one is you throw a dart and you hope something hits.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was a second or third round receiver. It's not a great offense, and there's plenty of other receivers there to take work away from him, like Deontay Johnson, like Adam Thielen. But the thought is that they drafted Legette, and he's gonna kind of mesh with their young quarterback, and there might be something there. Thielen is getting older. Deontay Johnson is just as new as Legette is in that offense, so it's kind of a lottery ticket, like you mentioned earlier.
And now we got Jahan Dotson, who just, I think last week was traded from the Commanders to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know how much Jalen Hurts is going to get another receiver involved. You already got to feed A.J. Brown. You already have to feed Devontae Smith. Now you have to feed Saquon. You also got to sprinkle in some Dallas Goedert. Jalen Hurts does love Dallas Goedert. I don't know how much Jahan Dotson's there, but it's another one. You take a gamble, maybe Jahan Dotson just completely takes over.
That's a end of bench guy that you can probably drop for someone that's in free agency that got left over because he probably doesn't have much value going forward. But it looks like the screenshot was taken when he was still in Washington, so he might already be off the team for all we know.
All right, Zach, let's grade this bitch.
All right. I mean, it's a solid team. I think that all in all, I would probably give this a B, a solid B. The quarterback, obviously a smash. I love Achane, Jamar Chase, Drake London. Those guys are all smashes at the position that they're at. I think he waited too long on tight end. And personally, I'm just not a huge fan of Aaron Jones this season in the new offense, and you don't really know what his role or volume is going to be. So I'd give it a solid B for a 12-team league. Obviously, the difficulty level in a 12-team league is much greater than a 10-team league because there's more guys going off the board every round. So I'd give this a B.
I'm gonna throw a B minus out there, and just the exact. Hold on, my cat is being a dick. Fuck off. I'm gonna give it a B minus. I do like the receiving core. I like the quarterback. I have no issues with the bench. The only thing I would try to improve on at some point in the season, maybe some of the guys on your bench start to boom. You can add them in. I would upgrade running back. Aaron Jones getting older. Don't know how much I trust him. Love Devon Achane. I am a Dolphins fan. But I just read today that Mike McDaniel says he intends to get all 3 running backs involved, and he will lean on the hot hand once we find out the game flow. So there's going to be games that Mostert's taken off. There might be games that Jalen Wright's taken off. There's going to be games where Achane's taken off. So it's like you try to stay away from the committees, and now over here you just got a trio of them.
But I mean, if you look at last year's efficiency, H10 was absolutely ridiculous on a per touch basis. I think he was around 7 yards a carry. I mean, the receiving volume was there. He was banged up with injuries, and that's my main concern. But if all things are being equal, I think HN is going to be the hot hand in every game that you give him an opportunity. So, one recommendation I would give for this roster right here. I don't know what the free agency pool looks like, but if there's another tight end out there that could pop off, I would probably hedge your bet because Goddard could be, the odd man out in that offense. There's just a lot of mouths to feed, and you can't really rely on him on a week-to-week basis. I would probably drop someone like Dotson and pick up another tight end, like who's the rookie in Washington? His name escapes me. But he looks like a solid weapon coming out of the draft. And so maybe pick up another tight end that has the potential to blow up here.
Freaking cats, man. On to the next team. We have Take Harry in a 12-team league. He had the 4th overall pick. It looks like everybody's picking motherfucking Jalen Hurts. Okay, so we got Jalen Hurts, Breece Hall, Devon Achane. We'll start with the top 3. We've already talked about Hurts. We've already talked about Achane. Zach, would you like to goo goo gaga over Breece Hall?
I mean, I love me some Breece. It pains me because I'm a Dolphins fan. So, but he is set up for a great season. He already looked great last year, and that was with a bad offense in a team that was trailing offense. So the rushing volume wasn't necessarily there like it will be going forward in the future, assuming that the team is better. They have a great offensive line, and so with Aaron Rodgers coming back, rising tide lifts all boats. I think Breece Hall is in position for a monster season going forward. I don't know how he ended up with HN as RB2 in a 12-team league. I mean, he probably picked him in the 2nd round, picked up Hurts there in the 3rd or the 4th, but you can't top that top 3 right there. The quarterback and running back combination, that's elite. That's as good as you can ask for in fantasy football, let alone for a 12-team league.
It looks like he went RB heavy because the wide receivers, although are still talented, they're not they're not those top tier guys.
Yep.
Me personally, I'm not in on Chris Olave. I understand a lot of the fantasy football pages are, but I've learned over the years, stop fucking listening to PFF and all those guys because they say this guy's gonna boom, and then it's always a bust. Just like Gabe Davis, he's the last one that can come to memory. You gotta draft Gabe Davis. You gotta draft Gabe Davis. I drafted him, and I got to play him once.
I do like Olave. The receiver room here, the pass catchers are Olave, Calvin Ridley, and Brock Bowers. I do like Olave, preferably as a wide receiver too, because of the questionable or kind of fickle weeks that he has. Sometimes he'll sometimes disappear. He'll sometimes get 5 targets, sometimes gets 15 targets. But I do love the talent, and he seems to have a rapport with Derek Carr. So I don't have any problem with Olave being your wide receiver 1 as long as you've locked in your running backs, which he obviously has. So no complaints there. Calvin Ridley, though, I'm a little concerned about Calvin Ridley.
See, I'm not.
You're not. I mean, so
No.
it depends. Will Levis. I have a solid bet on Will Levis this year. I have him as my primary backup quarterback in a quarterback prominent league, and so if anything happens to my starting quarterback, I'm relying on Levis to step in, and I think that he will have a good season. I like the talent. The problem is we just haven't seen it yet. It's not confirmed. So if he can get that rapport with Calvin Ridley, especially over the first few weeks when DeAndre Hopkins is out, I think Ridley could have himself a pretty solid season. I just it's hard to be relying on him as your wide receiver too.
I like Calvin Ridley, and I agree on the Chris Olave front. I think the reason I'm not so high on him is just because of Derek Carr. I think if it was still Jameis Winston, I'd be a little bit more. I'd be like, okay, this guy's going to launch too. I like Calvin Ridley, and it's the same reason I like DeAndre Hopkins. They're both super talented, and I think Will Levis is going to have a breakout year. And put it on the board. Will Levis, QB8 this year.
Wow,
Watch it.
the potential is there. The potential is there.
They've done everything right by him. They got him They got him two good running backs. They went and they fixed the wide receivers. They got him Hopkins and Ridley. I don't know that tight end. I know he's got a really awesome name, and I think he's super talented. So, I mean, it's all there for him. And he has a cannon, but he does put mayo on his coffee.
That endorsement deal is going to go crazy.
Dude's going to be endorsed by Hellman's.
He already is. Not
So
even
Brock
lying.
Bowers. What do you like, Brock Bowers?
Brock Bowers. I mean, it's another one similar to the last team that waited on tight end, obviously. However, we know what Dallas Goedert is. We don't know what Brock Bowers is, and so the talent coming out of college, he was the best tight end prospect since, well, I guess since Kyle Pitts, but it's not saying much because Kyle Pitts hasn't done much. But Brock Bowers has looked amazing, and taking a tight end that early, you know the Raiders are going to try to feed him the ball and make that pick worth it. I like this so much more as a high potential tight end than Dallas Goedert because I feel like Brock Bowers' floor is essentially where Goddard is, but his ceiling is top 5, top 3 tight end in fantasy if they feed him the ball like they should.
His ceiling is like a Mark Andrews, Laporta, Travis Kelce.
Yeah, 100%.
So now the flex, I personally hate putting running backs in my flex, but Zamir White, I know you're high on him. I have him in 3 leagues. I have no complaints about the pick. I think they're going to run the ever-loving piss out of him. And he can catch the ball. It's what you want from running backs.
I think that, I like Zamir White. I think I have leagues where he's my RB2. So I'm guessing this draft, a lot of people either didn't know or didn't like Zamir White, and he probably fell down the draft because over the last few weeks I've seen him climbing up the draft board. But having him as your flex, he must have fallen in this draft, and I have no complaints with him in the flex. I think he could be a starting caliber running back. And just in case, like you said, it's not great always having running backs in your flex just because of the volatility of that position. When you have a guy that you think is going to be good, that's starter quality, there's no issue with him starting. And then you have a guy like Xavier Worthy coming off the bench, and probably with the way these rookies go, they'll kind of increase over the course of the season. And by the second half of the year, he could be Patrick Mahomes' favorite target. So, you can ride Zamir White for as long as you can, and then hopefully Xavier Worthy comes in and takes over that flex spot second half of the season.
I love Xavier Worthy, and I'm pissed because I wasn't able to get him or Hollywood Brown in any of my leagues. So pissed. But yeah. I mean, Rishi Rice is there, but Hollywood Brown's out. So you have Xavier Worthy right now on your bench. They're comparing him to Tyreek Hill in a Patrick Mahomes offense where everybody found out who Tyreek Hill was. This is worth probably, I'd say probably everybody in his starters he drafted first, and then you're getting Xavier Worthy in what, the 9th, 10th round?
Right.
I think that's extremely great value.
Yep.
Fucking hoodlums thing, huh?
Now this is where it kind of falls off a cliff for me.
Yeah.
As far as the bench is concerned, Mike Williams, big question mark. New offense, new quarterback. You don't know how that wide receiver room is going to really shake out. Tyler Lockett looks like he might be taking a step back behind Jackson Smith and Jigba this year. Zach Charbonnet is a handcuff. I wouldn't really want to, roster him personally if I didn't have Kenneth Walker. Matt Stafford is a great backup quarterback. No complaints there. And then you have the Green Bay Packers third string running back, but now second string running back now that AJ Dillon's out for the year, and Jonathan Brooks on IR. Jonathan Brooks should be good. Once he comes back, he'll probably be out a week or two. But that after Xavier Worthy, the bench is a little bit questionable. May want to look into some trades. May want to look into free agency. But all in all, this is a very good team.
I will start with the grading this time. I'm going to give this team an A-. And that's just because I'm higher on the receivers than you are on Ridley and everything. I like Xavier Worthy a lot. Maybe the bench is what's keeping me from giving it an A instead of an A+. If the bench is a little bit better, this has an A. But I like your quarterback. Running back is the most important position, and you have 3 probably top 15 running backs here. Everything else can be fixed in free agency trades, even receiver. You can go trade one of these running backs and get some receiver depth if you want.
If Zamir White has 2 good weeks to start the season, you're
Get
flipping him for a top-end receiver. Yeah.
I'm not, because I have Rashad White and Zamir White, so kind of like that little
The
play
White
on
brothers.
game, right? White man can run.
I think I agree with you. I would also give this an A-. I think that the draft board fell to him in a way that he ended up doing a double hero RB draft strategy, which in the fantasy community just means, you're prioritizing running backs early because you have 2 great ones on the board for you, and then you kind of fill out your receivers later on. And so that looks like how the draft kind of played out for him. He took Hall, took Achane, and then didn't take one until Zamir White a few rounds later. So I think that it really worked out here for him. And like you said, the holes that he has on this roster can be fixed with free agency or trades. There's no blatant holes that he can be exploited in right now.
I will tell you this, though. In the 2 years I've known Harry, he has told me that whatever players he drafts end up fucking sucking. So let's hope the curse is broken this year, because I got some of these players.
Doesn't that happen to us all?
On to the next team. We have Tyler McFarland, somebody who was texting me saying, where is the fantasy rankings? And I will tell you this. He listens to the podcast. He listens to all we talk about. He copied a lot of our strategies here, and you'll see it when we bring up some of the names. I know for a fact he got Kyler Murray in the 9th round.
Here.
Kyler Murray in the 9th round. So a 10-team league, he had the 8th pick. I know he went Jonathan Taylor, and then he went Garrett Wilson. No brainer. You get a top 5 running back, you get a top 10 receiver. Boom.
At the 8th pick, that's all you can ask for. I like that.
This is where it gets tricky now. It looks like he went Alvin Kamara. Devontae Smith. I'm iffy on. I wouldn't want to roster him, and I wouldn't want him as my wide receiver too. What is your take on that one?
He is worthy of being a wide receiver too. I would probably prefer him as a flex.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have been overdrafted here, but it really depends on what he was going for. He might have waited on wide receiver while he took Trey McBride. It depends really what he was doing there, but it's not horrible. But in a 10-team league, you should be able to do better. But as far as Garrett Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, that is a great trio right there as far as the starting running backs and the top receiver. With the 8th pick, that's very solid.
So looks like he locked in one of those top 5 tight ends, Trey McBride. So no complaints here. The first team, we're not complaining about the tight end.
And he got the stack with Kyler.
Yep. Like, do you want to come back to Kyler Murray? Because I know for a fact he told me, he's like, I got Kyler Murray in the 9th round, like you said.
Yeah, sure.
DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in Chicago. Finally has a good quarterback. He's had to deal with some bullshit. The kid is super talented. I like him as a flex. You may even be able to move Devontae Smith down. Or once we get to the bench, you might not even have to play Devontae Smith if you don't want to.
Right, depending. Because Devonta Smith does have those weeks where he kind of disappears. DJ Moore is more consistent. He probably doesn't have the highest ceiling, as high a ceiling as Devonta Smith does, even though he does have his pop-off weeks, DJ Moore. But he is more consistent in that offense for sure.
So let's get to Kyler Murray before we go to the bench. Not really much we have to say because, I've been pounding it for all the last 2 weeks we've been doing fantasy football content.
I do like Kyler Murray. I think that his price point right now is great. If you're waiting on quarterback and you don't end up with one of the top 3 or 4, Kyler Murray is the perfect candidate that you can wait for and get him around, round 8 through 10. So that's very solid, and he stumbled into that stack with Trey McBride. I mean that's just great value right there.
Now let's get to the bench, and this is all Jordan and Zach people. Terry McLaurin, who we're both in on, clear-cut wide receiver 1. Jahan Dotson is gone. Curtis Samuel is gone. There's targets to be had, and guess who's going to get all of them? Terry
And a
McLaurin.
new rookie quarterback. This is the safety blanket right here.
Tyjae Spears, Zach's golden goose. Xavier Worthy, another golden goose. Chase Brown. Chase Brown's an interesting one. I've been hearing a lot about him. I know we haven't talked about him much. I ended up with him in one league. So what do you think about him?
So Chase Brown, I like. Right now, he's supposedly going to be sharing the backfield with Zach Moss in Cincinnati. But we know what Zach Moss is. Chase Brown is young, and he's a running back that could take over that backfield, and that could end up being, a startable player in fantasy if they do hand him the reins. We've seen Joe Mixon do great things in that offense. So I do like Chase Brown, and just the note here that I have with Tyjae Spears, Xavier Worthy, and Brown, that is the best thing to look for on your bench is youth, because if you stack up old heads like Adam Thielen and whoever else might be out there, Tyler Lockett, you end up with guys that don't have the high ceiling. You know what they are, and all they can do is really kind of decrease from where they've been previously. These young guys, the sky is the limit for them. You don't know exactly what they are yet, so they pop off, and you have yourself a great season from those guys.
Curtis Samuel, that's somebody I said. That's somebody I feel like probably considering where he got him, if he doesn't end up panning out, dropping him isn't going to hurt this team at all.
Right.
Adonai Mitchell is someone that I know the fantasy focus people are in on. What do you stop that? That's talking. What do you think about Adonai Mitchell? Michael Pittman's one, but then they got Josh Downs and Adonai Mitchell.
I mean, Adonai Mitchell is a very talented rookie. I could see him fighting for that wide receiver 2 spot and potentially getting a good amount of looks in that offense. But it's another lottery ticket, like I was talking about with the other 3, with Spears, Worthy, and Brown. You got to target young players late in the draft because it's a very low risk, very high reward situation. I mean, just look back to the Jonathan Taylors, the Justin Jeffersons. Those guys as rookies, they weren't necessarily drafted high in any fantasy league. They actually were very low in fantasy leagues, some of them not even being drafted. And then as the season goes on, they kind of hit their stride and they end up being league winners as rookies. So this guy has a bunch of lottery tickets, and I really like his bench.
You see the backup quarterback?
I do.
Tua is he's a serviceable fantasy quarterback. He's not a great fantasy quarterback because he provides literally nothing with his legs. But, you can count him in for throwing the ball 35 times a game and at least 3 touchdowns. So it's good if Kyler Murray ends up getting hurt. Your drop off from maybe 17 to 20 points will be 15 to 17. So it's still good.
It's a solid floor play. Like you said, you're not going to get the super high weeks with the running capabilities, but he's going to give you a handful of touchdowns and yards every week. So if there is an injury, then you have someone solid behind him that's not going to drop off too terribly much. It's better than maybe streaming a Gardner Minshew every week.
On to the next one, we have Cal Gary. Joey's brother.
Ah,
10-team league. He had the 10th pick. This team is pretty goddamn good, if I must say so myself. Patrick Mahomes, we're not going to talk about at all. We know. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones. I will tell you this. He is a Viking fan. We know why he's drafting Aaron Jones. Every single Viking fan I know has drafted Aaron
I
Jones.
mean, Joey drafted Aaron Jones in our league.
Oh, would you look at that? You just confirmed. Jahmyr Gibbs. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. And I drafted him in every single league last year. And I was one of those idiots that was impatient and I got rid of him in every league. And now I'm suffering because of it. There was one redraft league I did where I drafted him immediately. I was like, nope, we're doing this again. Come back home. What do you think of the Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones duo?
I mean, we've already talked about Aaron Jones. Not ideal as an RB2, but sneaking a peek at the rest of this team, it's clear that he went kind of hero RB here. He got his top running back, and then he wanted to fill out receivers and tight ends after that, and quarterbacks. Probably before returning to running back. So, just based on that, Aaron Jones isn't bad because as you see, he's set everywhere else through his flex. But we'll get to that in a minute. Jahmyr Gibbs, I really like. Obviously, had a really good second half to his rookie season, and that'll just get him more work in this offense. So, love him at RB1 as the 10th pick. Can't really argue about it.
Well, it looks like probably 10th pick you went AJ Brown or Gibbs. I don't really think it matters. I mean,
Right.
you had 10 and 11.
Right.
But AJ Brown, George Pickens. I know you love some George Pickens this year.
Now that what's
Ayuk
his
is
face?
staying.
Was that?
Ayuk is staying.
Yes. Now that Ayuk is staying and signed up in San Francisco, I love George Pickens even more. I mean, you have two quarterbacks in Pittsburgh right now. The starter um, is Russell Wilson, and the backup is Justin Fields. Both of those guys have shown in the past that they can support top end wide receivers in fantasy. Justin Fields is younger, but he has fed DJ Moore in the past. Obviously, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett have been great fantasy producers for Russell Wilson. So as long as they're throwing the ball and as long as Pickens is healthy, I love the upside of having him on the roster. And I think he's going to have a really, really good season. The talent is there, and he's been on an upward trajectory his entire career. And this could be his coming out party.
If we were trying to determine the draft order that this team was selected, it'd be impossible because it looks like he also drafted tight end fairly high because he went and got the second tight end on the board.
Yep.
You get Laporta, you have the top quarterback, you have a top 10 running back, you have a top 5 receiver. I mean, this team is perfect.
Yep. You have Sam Laporta at tight end, which, like you just said, a top 2 guy. A lot of fantasy players are picking him over Travis Kelce, which it's up to you. I'd probably prefer Kelce, but if you waited till the 3-4 turn to get Laporta, that's great value from where he's normally been going. And so that's a top end tight end. Then you have in the flex Jalen Waddle, who
my favorite player of all time,
who should be in most fantasy leagues at worst a wide receiver 2. Having him as your flex is such a flex. Like that is that is as good a flex as you can ask for, and that's why I assume that he waited on RB2 because he was stacking his wide receivers and tight ends out and before returning to running back. So love Jalen Waddle in the flex, and that's going to pay dividends this entire season.
And now bench another guy that clearly has listened to our podcast: Terry McLaurin, Xavier Worthy, Tyjae Spears. Those are our 3 guys. We're going to stand behind them through thick and thin, preferably thick, because if it's thin, then I don't want to have to eat my words. Raheem Mostert's kind of he's a gamble.
Listen, if you look at last season and you could get someone similar to Achan's production on your bench, someone comparable to the production that you can expect in this offense, like you said, with the committee, I don't have any complaints about that. He wanted, a backup running back in case Aaron Jones wasn't worth starting. But yeah, no complaints about Mostert, Worthy, Spears, McLaurin. Those are all veterans of our podcasts. And honestly, I'm so proud or so happy that all of these teams so far have had some of those guys. Like that's crazy, and I hope for the best for all those guys.
Doesn't that just make you feel good that people are listening to us?
It sure does. It sure
You're like,
does.
these two idiots know what they're talking about, kind of.
Let's help win people some leagues, huh?
Yeah, well, he's clearly a brand new listener because he didn't listen last year. That Zach crucifies people that have two defenses on their team. So
Waste of a
I've been
roster
waiting.
spot.
That's why I put this one towards the end.
Yeah, roll with one. The Seahawks have the better matchup. Drop
Yeah.
the Steelers defense and go pick up someone else that might pop up in week one, so you don't have to worry about putting in the waiver for them.
Caleb Williams. I feel like with rookie quarterbacks, most of the time it's a gamble. I feel like with Caleb Williams, it's not a gamble. It's a waiting game. He's gonna have an okay fantasy season, but the potential that he has to have a boom season and then for years to come, I think Caleb Williams, I don't think you needed him with Mahomes as your starter. He is more of a safety blanket for somebody if you get like a Jordan Love, a Kyler Murray if they don't pan out, a Dak Prescott. If you're going to get a Mahomes or a Josh Allen, you don't need a guy with that much potential because it's like you're never going to switch them out.
So that is the perspective of the majority of the fantasy community. Like if you talk to any of the fantasy focus guys or any of the PFF guys, they're going to tell you you don't need a backup quarterback if you have one of these top guys. For me, I don't mind having a backup even when you have one of these top guys because there's two reasons. First of all, this is football. And injuries happen. We saw Brady have major injuries in his career. Obviously, we've seen Tua have injuries. Justin Herbert have injuries when he was supposed to be having a great season. So injuries can always happen. God forbid Mahomes gets hurt. You don't want to be stuck, like I mentioned earlier, streaming the Minshews and the whoever else, the Drake Mays of the world for the rest of your fantasy season. So I don't have any problem with having Caleb Williams. And then the second reason is because let's say Caleb Williams goes off. This is a rookie quarterback in what looks like a very good offense. What if he goes off and is putting up top 5, top 10 fantasy numbers? You can flip him in a trade for another starting player. Because right now you draft him as a bench player. You're not expecting to start him. But let's say someone has Jordan Love on there as their starting quarterback and he falters a little bit. Or let's say someone has a quarterback on their team that gets hurt. Now they're looking for that next guy. Oh, boom, I have a second quarterback. Let me fill my RB2 spot a little bit stronger by flipping this starting worthy quarterback. So I don't have any problem with drafting the Caleb Williams or the Jaden Daniels of the world, even if you have another quarterback. And it looks like he waited a long time when he was just sitting there on the draft board. So no complaint there.
You got a backup tight end in Cole Kmet, who I think is a perfect backup tight end because he is boom or bust. He doesn't give you 10. He either gives you 20 or he gives you 3. You're always going to play Laporta, no matter what the matchup is. But now when you have a bye week, you throw Kmet in, and there's potential. It's a gamble. Maybe you get 20 that week, you win.
See, Kmet is the kind of guy that I don't know if he's good enough to roster as a backup tight end. I don't think that he's the kind of guy that's going to get picked up, because he's what, tight end 15 or 16 in rankings. If you have Sam Laporta, I'm much more likely to have one tight end on the roster, and then you can stream tight end if anything happens, like injury or like a bye. I don't know if Kmet is the caliber of player that you want to keep as a backup. And then you have, of course, Jalen Naylor, who Joey also introduced me to.
No idea who that is.
Third string receiver on the Vikings. Apparently, he's very popular in Vikings circles. Like he might pop off. But when you have Justin Jefferson, when you have Jordan Addison, and you have, probably mediocre quarterback play, I don't know if that wide receiver 3 is worth taking a chance on, at least not yet. But hey, at the end of the day, for the last spot on your bench, have a little bit of fun with it. You're not going to win or lose your league there, and so you can cash in on a guy that you're excited about as a fan.
All right, you ready to wrap this up? Let's grade it. Get on to the last one.
All right.
You start this grading. I got the last one.
All right. I am going to give this team an A. I think you know how hard it is to get an A draft picking from the 10 spot? Like the degree of difficulty there is much higher than almost any other spot because of what's left over in the first round. So you really need to kind of find value throughout the draft. But you have a top three quarterback. You have a young running back that's set to explode in Jahmyr Gibbs. You have the ultra consistent AJ Brown, George Pickens, who we love, the possibly the top tight end, Jalen Waddle as the flex, and a very solid bench until you get into the bottom three.
The
I
defense.
think I'm giving it an A, not an A plus, and the reason it's not an A plus is, like I said earlier, I'm dinging them a little bit for Aaron Jones as the backup running back, but looking at the rest of this roster, can't really argue it. So I'm not putting so much weight there. But then the double defenses wasting a spot on the bench. So I think it's a very, very good team, and it wouldn't surprise me if this team ended up winning the championship.
I'm also going to give this an A. And if you got rid of those last three bench spots and you left them wide open and they were just empty, I'd give it an A plus. I have no idea who Josh Naylor is. Joey, if you listen to this and you want to text me and threaten me, fuck you. How about that? Cole Kmet, I mean, I understand having a backup tight end. After hearing your explanation, I have now swayed my opinion, and I don't think you need the backup tight end anymore. The backup defense is just stupid. But Mahomes, Gibbs, love that combo. A.J. Brown, Pickens, I love the receivers. I'm usually a receiver-heavy kind of guy, and I think that's why I never win because I always neglect my running backs. I think he has enough players on this team as trade bait that he could use to upgrade this before the season even starts, maybe.
For
So
sure.
I'm going to give this an A. I want to go back to this team. Did we grade this?
I think we did.
Okay.
Did we not?
I gave this a A minus.
Yeah, I agreed.
Okay. Now on to the last one. Vinny Fredelosa, the only douchebag that uses sleeper. So Vinny's league is actually super interesting. He was texting me and he was explaining it to me. So it's a 10-man league. He had the 5th pick, and there was one keeper. Now, his keeper sucked. He kept Rashad White.
Okay.
But everyone's here, I'm reading exactly what he said to me. Everyone's keeper is the round before they drafted him in the previous year. For example, I drafted Rashad White round 8 last year. So I kept him this year in the 7th round. So that means his 7th round he was not picking. It was just a keeper. Which is cool, but complicated.
Well, it's actually pretty common for like the fantasy old heads. Like that's a thing that has been around for a while, and so it changes the calculus altogether. You can't just keep it as simple as am I keeping Rashad White or am I keeping Breece Hall? Because Breece Hall you're giving up that first round pick probably. Rashad White you're getting at value in the 7th round, so it kind of changes how you view the keepers and which keeper you want to keep on. So. Rashad White wasting a 7th round pick. That's awesome. That's great value there for a starting running back.
So I would like to apologize ahead of time that it's blurry. This is why I hate sleeper. These sleeper pictures are so long. So I had him send me 2 cut up versions, and they were so small that I had to stretch them out. So it was just a nightmare. But I don't think you're 108 years old yet. You're only like 60, so we're good. Can you?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. One thing that pops out is again for the 7th time today we have Jalen Hurts as starting quarterback. What else can we say about Jalen Hurts?
Praise Jesus.
He's good.
Rashad White in the 7th round. The value's there, but tell me what you think about the player because I've also dabbled in the Rashad White pool this year.
Yep. It's definitely very good value for the 7th round, but just in general as your RB1, I would say it's solid. Looking at the other running back for this team, Joe Mixon, I think that You probably would want a better RB duo. Um, I'm just not super in on Joe Mixon this year. He has the potential in that offense. It's going to be a great offense. Like they could feed him the ball, but I think Stroud is going to be throwing that ball around a lot. So Rashad White and Joe Mixon, it's not a great starting duo, but looking at the rest of this team, it looks like he went all out filling other holes first before running back. So it's not like he was reaching on running backs. He actually filled out his other spots pretty well first.
So Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, and then we might as well throw in Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin. As a wide receiver quad, that's not bad. Jamar Chase, we know what we're getting there. We've already hounded about Chris Olave.
Chris Olave as
Amari
wide
Cooper,
receiver too.
that's how you prefer him.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper and Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin is an interesting one. I have him in my dynasty league, which is kind of terrible, but he is my wide receiver one in that league. But Amari Cooper, if Deshaun Watson is going to do what experts are expecting him to do, that in your flex is a knockout. But if Deshaun Watson's going to be a fuck stick like he was last year, you may need to upgrade your flex position a little bit because the bench is looking a little horrifying.
I am not the biggest fan of Amari Cooper. I know that he is expected to do good things, and like he's another one of those guys that's just super consistent. He's going to
He's
get
just
you 10 to
always
15.
there.
Yeah, he's going to get you 10 to 15 points. He's at this point in his career, I don't think he's going to be going off for any 20, 25 fantasy point games. So honestly, I would probably value Godwin over Cooper, but having both of them, it is what it is. He wanted to fill out his flexes with wide receivers, which is how I would highly recommend them to do. So yeah, hard to complain. At this point, it's about player preference, and so yeah, no complaints with Cooper and Godwin as the flexes.
Completely just skip over tight end because it's Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Nothing bad we can say about Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Now your backup quarterback is Brock Purdy. Okay, it's a consistent backup quarterback. I think
Right.
that's exactly where he should be drafted as a backup quarterback.
Yep.
Zach Moss. You said Chase Brown might take over. We know what Zach Moss is. I think last year was an outlier. Doubt he does it again, but if he does, you drafted him, and now you potentially have another RB1. Maybe.
Right.
Jalen Polk, I'm staying completely away from New England Patriots. This is a dart throw that you're hoping gets on the board. This is not one that hits the board and bounces back at you.
With Jalen Polk, with Jalen Polk, I recently in one of my leagues, I recently dropped the last player on my bench to pick up Jalen Polk just because there's that possibility that he ends up as wide receiver one in New England. And even though it's New England, and even though we don't know what their offense is going to look like, new coach, new quarterback, whatever, it sounds like he built up a rapport with fellow rookie Drake May during the preseason and training camp. If he ends up as wide receiver one in a decent offense, not even a good offense, a decent offense, that there could be fantasy value there. So as an end of your bench guy, I have no issue with it. I'm actually doing it myself.
Nerds. D-Hop, we've already talked about. Tyler Lockett, probably at the end of your bench, you can't really complain. I don't think there's going to be much value there. That's someone that if you're going to play him, you're hoping it's that 1 week where he's going to go for like 6 for 112.
Yeah.
And then David Njoku. It's another decent backup tight end, somebody you can use as trade bait even if you needed it.
Yep. It's a guy that could be or probably should be a starting tight end in fantasy. And so the fact that he's holding him on his bench, that is a possible trade piece. Some other tight end gets injured. You can offer him Njoku for, a starting caliber player or a high end bench player. Having a value like that on the bench, as long as he didn't draft him early, as long as he didn't draft him above, some of these other guys, That's probably a good thing, but if he drafted him ahead of other, good bench players, then I would question it a little bit. But nothing wrong with having extra trade chips on the bench.
I will say, I this year in one league drafted a lot of my bench, knowing that my friends were going to need the players. I play with Joe, and every year he takes who I want because he knows I'll trade for him. Well, this year I kept Mark Andrews. I looked, I'm like, oh, he doesn't have a tight end, does he? I knew he wanted Kyle Pitts. What did I do? I drafted Kyle Pitts. Now Kyle Pitts is sitting on my bench, and he's going to rot there until I get what I want.
Oh, that is evil. That is
Yep.
evil.
Well, talks a lot of shit. All right, Zach, let's give this a grade. And before you grade it, I'm going to tell you what I think. I told him I think you're going to grade it. Go.
All right, we have Jalen Hurts, Rashad White, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, Olave, Kelsey, Cooper, Godwin. I would give it a B.
Okay. That's fine. That's better than both of us said you were going to grade it.
I would give it a B strictly because of the running back situation. Like I mentioned, I'm not big on Joe Mixon this year, and so now you're relying on Rashad White to replicate what he did last year. And if he doesn't, you're kind of now stuck with Zach Moss. So I'm not going to tank the entire grade because of one position where I might not like the player, but obviously there is potential there with Joe Mixon. But the receivers are set, the tight end and quarterback are stacked, and then there's some decent pieces on the bench. So I would give it a solid B. And yeah, strictly because of the running back situation.
Okay, so we were in the same book right here. I also told him I was going to grade it a B just because I think the running back situation is a big question mark.
Yeah.
Now that I have Rashad White on both of my fantasy teams, I might lift this up to a B plus because I'm hoping that Rashad White is the guy.
Yeah.
Still, I was completely out on Joe Mixon, but Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Travis Kelce.
Everything else is an A.
Those four have the potential to carry you.
Yeah.
And Zach, that's all we got. We have successfully graded 5 fantasy football teams. Oh my God, my laptop is about to die. Zach, is there anything you want to say before I let you go?
That's fun. Keep sending us teams. We can do this kind of stuff all season.
And even send us trades. Maybe one week we'll have a bunch of guys ask us stuff, and we could review trades for them.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Zach. Always a pleasure.
Take it easy.